Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Supercars of London. I hope you're well. Another week in lockdown done. I'm feeling pretty good, actually. And I've been using this week, and this video is inspired by the things that I've been doing this week. I've been looking back quite a lot at old videos, cars that I've previously owned. I jumped on a Zoom call, did a Q&A with Sam, Tim, James, and Seb. Obviously, I did the road trip video, looking back at some of our favorite memories in Europe and the United States. And it got me thinking. I've been speaking to quite a lot of you guys on Instagram DMs, Twitter DMs, just going backwards and forwards, talking about memories on Supercars of London. And I thought that I'd make this video looking back at the supercars and sports cars that I've owned and which one I regret selling the most. I see a lot of questions when I'm doing Q&As on Instagram about this topic, and I've not touched upon it, and actually I don't think I've touched upon exactly why I sold some of the specific cars that I've owned over the years. So we'll dive straight in. I've got an archive of all of the cars, all of the sounds, and all of the best bits of the cars that I've owned, and we're going to be looking at Audi R8, Mercedes AMG GTS, Lamborghini Gallardo, Lamborghini Huracan, and I think that's it. Now we're actually gonna start with the last supercar that I sold, which was my 2017 Lamborghini Huracan. Now I recently featured on a podcast, Behind the Glass, with Sam and Tony. It was a Lamborghini special, and I talked a little bit about what ownership was like. It was my first new supercar that I bought, and it was from HR Owen, where I worked, where I did an apprenticeship back when I was 18 years old. So to go in a full circle and go through the entire buying process of a brand new Lamborghini through HR Owen, having worked there 10 years ago and watching all of these people come through the doors and collect their dream car, was a really special moment for me. Now it is hands down the most expensive car I've ever owned. I sold it so that I could get this place around me, so that I could get a mortgage. And it was a sensible decision. I had quite a lot of money in that car. The ownership experience of the Huracan was great. It is probably the most usable Lamborghini that Lamborghini have ever built, discounting the Urus. Two-seater, double clutch gearbox, 5.2 litre V10. I had the rear wheel drive, so mine was an LP 580, slightly less brake horsepower than the four-wheel drive LP 610-4. And I loved driving that car, creating memories around Europe with all of the guys. I did 7,000 miles in that car in 6 months. And I had to sell it quickly so that we could get a mortgage in principle on this place here. So I feel like I've kind of got unfinished business with the Huracan. I didn't quite do exactly the modifications that I had planned for that car. My intentions when I bought that car was I was going to do 20,000 miles in it in 12 months, and I was going to take it to Iceland. I was going to I wanted to become an automotive travel vlogger. That was what I wanted to do, and everywhere that I traveled, I took my Lamborghini. But I don't think I miss it as much as some of the other cars that I bought. Okay, we move on to the Mercedes AMG GTS, which arguably is more of a luxury GT car or a sports car GT car. It's definitely a Grand Tourer. 2 seats, massive boot space, front engine, around 600 brake horsepower with the Rentec tune, or maybe 625 brake horsepower with the Rentec tune, which I did over in Germany. That in itself was an epic road trip. Going to the Rentec headquarters, getting new downpipes, an ECU tune, and then taking it out around the ring. And I did set a sub 10-minute lap. It's the only time I've driven the Nürburgring on a public track day. I've done the N24 parade lap a couple of times, but the Mercedes AMG GTS was the best balance between a daily driver and an out-and-out terrifying sports car to drive on the B roads around the UK. I also did a number of road trips in that car. I took it down to Germany, we took it down to Monaco. I then changed the wrap a couple of times. I put a stripe across it. It was obviously in its famous True Blood form when I collected it, but that was a wrap in itself. I bought it grey from Southern Sky Motors, and it had everything that I wanted on it. It had the premium pack, it had the driving plus package, I think it was, that had engine mounts and suspension mounts, and it drove phenomenally. Then I went to Dub Customs because I was kind of bored of the True Blood and I wanted to try something different, and we layered black chrome underneath a satin clear finish. So we created this satin chrome effect, which in the daylight, when there wasn't any sun shining, it just looked matte grey. And I was kind of disappointed from that side of things. But then at night, as soon as light started to bounce off the black chrome underneath the satin PPF, it was a transformation in the way that that car looked and the road presence that it had. And as I said, to drive, it was amazing. 95% of the time, I had it in comfort mode. I cruised around in automatic. It was great. But then when I wanted to hoon it and when I wanted to really wring the engine out, that engine and the platform, I would buy an AMG GTS again. I paid $110 for that car. And now I saw it recently for sale with about 25,000 miles on it. And it was about 70 grand. So they've come down really well. And again, that was a car that I wasn't intending on selling when I did. It just so happened that someone turned up to Dub Customs when it was there in all of its glory, satin black chrome, Rentec tune, tyre stickers on it. It looked great. And a Dub Customs customer came in and said, I want to buy that car. Do you think Paul will sell it? And that's pretty much how I sold the car. And I got all of my money back. So I essentially owned the AMG GTS for free and then went and bought my Huracan. Now, out of all of the super sports cars that I've owned, this is probably the least super out of all of them. But at the time, I was 23 years old, and this was really what set my channel up. The Audi R8, my first supercar. I came out of university, I'd done a bunch of London supercar spotting filming, but that was very seasonal, and I needed to create a sustainable video upload schedule that would then enable me to start earning more consistent revenue per month. So I came up with the idea, my first supercar, and it was designed to kind of give people an insight into how you would go about shopping for a first supercar. But in my head, I was shopping for my first supercar. It was, and still is, the only super sports car or sports car that I've owned by itself. Every other car that I've had a daily alongside it. And the R8 was really the learning curve for me because it was a great car. I was so nervous to drive it because the car that I had before that was a Vauxhall Astra 1.6, moving up to a 4-litre V8 manual Audi R8. I was terrified at how expensive the car was, how much money I was paying per month on that car, and whether I was going to be able to recoup that money in revenue by making these YouTube videos. So it was a massive risk for me to go and buy the Audi R8. And I have so many memories with that car. It's the longest standing sports car on my channel. I owned it for about 18 months. I did about 15,000 miles in it. And still to this day, I think the price of it hasn't changed. But because I didn't have a daily driver to disconnect me away from that car and to get into something a little bit more normal, the R8 became my daily car. Therefore, I became desensitized to how special it should have been, and maybe it became a little bit normal for me. It was the only car that I was driving day to day. I did 15,000 miles in it. Every time I got in that car, I was like, oh, there you go, there's the manual gearbox, there's the clutch, there's everything. I became used to it. And I think that was the one thing that made me very nervous and aware of how important it is to have a daily driver, just so that when you do get in that special sports car or supercar, it feels special to you. So the Audi R8, as great as it was, became a little bit normal very quickly. And whilst I would buy a manual V8 R8 again, it's probably because of the sentimental value it has to me, rather than it was better than the Huracan, it was better than the AMG GTS. That's why I'd buy an Audi R8 again. So I think Huracan, AMG GTS, R8 is how I would order it. And then we've got the Gallardo. Now, the reason why the Gallardo, for me, is the #1 supercar that I regret selling the most out of everything is because when I bought that car, it was a big jump from the R8. I sold the R8 for 40 grand and I bought the Lamborghini for 107 grand. So it was a big jump. My first Lamborghini before the age of 25, which was always my dream. I don't really know why I set that milestone, but it's good to have goals in life. So I wanted to own a Lamborghini by 25. I didn't know how I was gonna do it. I was documenting my story on my YouTube channel. The Gallardo was the one car that I felt underskilled to drive it. I didn't get the best out of that car. Obviously the modifications that I did to the exhaust were amazing. It set off car alarms everywhere that I went. It was exactly what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be the loudest Lamborghini in Europe, which I believe it was.
Headphones going on, headphones going on.
It spat flames, we did amazing road trips in it, and I sold it after 6 months because it was almost unusable in the UK for the drives that I wanted to do. So around the M25, it was useless with the clutch. Up here in the B roads, I wasn't good enough to drive that car, to feel confident enough to push it on. I was only 24 years old when I bought that car. And it was too loud in the towns and the cities. So any time I drove it through the towns, the sounds off the walls, I was terrified that the police were just gonna pull me over and be like, what have you done to this car? Take it off and then carry on. So that car made me incredibly nervous to drive, being a 24-year-old driving a massive V10 mid-engine with a clunky gearbox, that I didn't really know how to master that car. So looking back, that is the one car that I regret selling. So there we go. That was a little bit of nostalgia, looking back at some amazing memories, road trips, drives, sounds, modifications that I have done to my cars over the years. And to think when I was at school, dreaming of one day owning a Lamborghini, am I now at 29 years old making this video in lockdown, talking about all of these crazy cars that I've owned. And of course I've missed out the M3, the C63 and the other dailies. But out of all of the cars that I have personally bought supercar wise, there we go. And I think it leads nicely on to what is gonna happen post-lockdown. The Murcielago is finished. It is at Barkaways. I will collect it as soon as we're allowed out and essential travel is kind of lifted and we're allowed to actually do things like go and get the car. And then I will probably look at the ultimate car to replace it, that I can begin to create more memories like the ones that I've already created with the cars, modifications, road trips, not caring about the mileage that I do on the car. That to me is the key factor to the next car or cars that I buy. Not mileage sensitive, because the Murcielago is too mileage sensitive, but it was my dream car, so I'm glad that I owned it. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little throwback look at some of the cars that I've owned, and also answering the question, what is the one supercar that I regret selling the most? Is that what you were expecting? Were you expecting me to say the Gallardo? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll be seeing you very soon on the Supercars of London YouTube channel for another video. Take care, goodbye.